Guys, I'm back. I promised I would do a video about Selena's new album Rare, which just came out. Gonna be transparent when I say that I haven't always been the biggest Selena Gomez stan. I just started standing after Lose You to Love Me, though I do admit that she has a catalog of bops. The journey to this album has been interesting. She dropped a bunch of singles and songs and releases for soundtracks, but never really made any traction over the 4 years since Revival. So the big question is, was it worth the wait? And I think for the most part it was. My opinion of Selena's talents don't necessarily lend themselves towards songwriting ability or vocal talent. She's very talented at curating soundscapes and trends. Just looking through the amount of producers and songwriters that she's collabed with, there's a very good, interesting mix of people. It's not just Julia Michaels writing every single track. I feel like she took the time and the due diligence to branch out sonically and to pick out demos and songs that definitely suit her. So let's start. The opening track is Rare. It's a titular song, and I had actually heard the demo a few years back. People thought it was Emily Warren, though sources say that it was Madison Love's voice on that, as well as some of Charlie's demo, like some of the snippets it leaked. I think Selena's take on the song borrows from the demo vocals, and it speaks volumes to her ability to mimic or chameleon other people's voices, because it sounds very similar to the demo, though she does borrow some of the demo's vocals in the chorus. One thing that I think will always have me coming back to this track is how clean the instrumental is. It's very polished, but there's a little bit of grit to it in the guitar. It's very fresh and kind of throwbacky, but I don't know how to describe it. It's nostalgic sounding. The next track I think will be a favorite for some people. It's called Dance Again, and it's a banger that kind of feels way more in line with 2013's Stars Dance than any of her current soundscapes, which isn't an issue. I feel like we've separated ourselves from that time period enough that perhaps it's a good time to revisit it and expand on it. It's still pretty repetitive as a song. I doubt that this would be a single choice down the line, but if you do want to see it on tour, I feel like there'd be some good choreo for this. This reminds me of a song from Stars Dance called Forget Forever, in that like it'll probably be like a fan favorite gem or something. Then of course we have Look at Her Now. I really like the song. I like the music video. I liked how it was released. I did think that it would have been an interesting single choice, but it's a very refined Selena song that really takes from the best of her. It reminds me of It Ain't Me, but with self-empowering lyrics. It's sort of a summation of modern Selena, and I wish the album had trended towards the sonic soundscape. Really like the lyrics, she knows she'll find love in the year she wants it. I felt like that was a really nice touch as a lyric. Definitely one of her best lyrics. And then we have the single that started it all, Lose You to Love Me, and I was worried that this was going to be the peak of the album, and in many ways it ended up actually being one of the best songs on the album, which isn't a crime. It's always great to release singles that are reflective of your best work. I just feel like the storytelling and the intimacy of this track and the history that the public knows about it, it's such a nice, interesting blend in a way that songs by Taylor and Thank You Next particularly resonated with the public, because it's a universal situation happening to a celebrity, like something we can all take away from. Having your comeback single be a ballad is a very ballsy choice, and it paid off clearly because this era went off on a great start. If only someone else had, played it a little bit risky, but this is just the only shade I'm going to toss towards his way. The next track is Ring. When this was announced, I really had hope that this was going to be the Charlie demo. The clinking instrumental is the highlight for me for the song. One of the more inventive songs on the record for sure. The lyrics tread pretty familiar territory about Selena valuing her independence despite there being a huge amount of people who want her, obviously. This would actually work interestingly well as a Camila Cabello song, but Selena has this confidence here that really suits the track better. I really like how rich the instrumental sounds. There's a lot of character to it. It feels cinematic a lot of times, and the chorus may come off as lazy, but there's just a savageness in the delivery that makes it a delight. Vulnerable is a disco-y sounding track, at least at the beginning. And it's one of my favorites from the album. The rushed delivery of the verses and the vocoder makes this an irresistible jam. Also, thematically, it lends a sense of neediness, but also urgency. Again, the lyrics aren't necessarily the deepest lyrics. There's nothing too personal here, which may be one of my complaints about the entire record. But again, Selena record, you can't really expect layered or meaningful lyrics beyond certain surface levels, which is fine because, some people really do value their privacy and don't want to air out everything in their music. This song reminds me of one of my favorites from Revival, Sober. It doesn't really cater to the current single space, though I would love to see it be released as a single. It's one of my personal favorites. It reminds me of Taylor Swift's Delicate in a way. The instrumental bridge is gorgeous. Like, the production here is really high caliber. I can't knock it. Some of y'all are about to hate on me, but People You Know is the first track to me that felt like filler. It's just not remarkable to me, and I've tried to get into it multiple times to get a sense of what the song is or what it's about, and it is about something relatively simple, but I just felt like it's just not. I think this was the first time listening to the record that I felt like I was taken out of it. And I know that some of you guys are going to really love it. The instrumental's really well done, but it just feels superficial and hollow in many senses. The production reminds me of Griffin style, and I like his work, but it just doesn't work here. Then we have Let Me Get Me, which is another song I wasn't really fond of. It felt like it was charted territory and filler yet again, almost a regression to the Stars Dance sound, but without any polish or growth. Though this is a good dance track, but I really don't see anything else beyond that. Then we get into Crowded Room, which is definitely one of my favorites, but I realized that the chorus sounds just like the one from Roll With Me by Charlie XCX, so that may be it. The lyrical work has a little bit of improvement here, and it's a solid romantic track. The sultry vocals and the simple production do a great job of highlighting maybe less is more with Selena. Good for You proved that she could get away with a pretty simple premise and a simple instrumental and cleanness. Like, pop minimalism is mainstream now, but it can be done artfully, and sometimes Selena manages to do it artfully. Who knows? The rap feature from Six Lack is actually a compliment to the track and never feels like a Rent-A-Rapper feature. I like how it sticks to the overall narrative of the song, and fun fact, this was co-written by BB Rexa, so that was pretty cool to hear about. The next track is called Kinda Crazy, which reminded me of a few other songs, but the instrumental is extremely rich here, and the vocals really complement the guitar riffs. It feels like a more mature, modern version of It Ain't Me. One thing that I know Stan Twitter will make a thing about this album is that it kind of sounds like the kind of music that you hear at an H&M dressing room and you're trying to find out whether or not overalls are a thing for you, and you find out that they kind of look cute on you, but then you're like, oh, what song is this? And then you find out it's a Selena song, and then you go, oh, okay, that works well here. She knows that she makes that type of music and she's not afraid to lean into it, and she's good at it. So I can't penalize her for that. We can't penalize her for that. Okay, so moving on, we have Fun. The whole guitar synth vibe starts to get a little bit boring here because that is the sound for the back end of the album, especially after how rich Kinda Crazy sounds. But the vocal effects that she overlays on her voice are pretty good here. The track kind of feels like filler. The chorus is really cool though. I like the pauses that she makes before the guitar riff comes in. Thematically, the lyrics lean into the other themes of the record, which are relatively superficial. I wasn't expecting a deep album again, but Lose You to Love Me almost tricked me into thinking we were going to get a really personal, deep record. But, we got bops, so I can't complain. But I do have one complaint with this song, and it's that the switch up on the bridge is so exciting, it makes me wish that was the vibe of the song. Okay, so if you made it this far, you're probably wondering, when does she start actively dissing Justin Bieber or The Weeknd or whatever bad ex she has? And that song is Cut You Off. It's definitely definitely a single-worthy jam. I kind of hope it's the next single. I doubt it will be. I think she'll go for something slower or something chiller. It sounds super unique compared to the other tracks on the record. The vocals here are actually pretty impressive. This one gave me some Julia Michaels vibes, but then I found out she didn't actually have any credits on the song, which is really interesting. But Selena does make the song her own song. I can tell that this is a Selena song and not something manufactured by someone else or a deleted demo. There's a guitar solo in the song that I hope stays intact if she ever releases it to radio. It's just really insane and I really love it a lot, and it brings me back to kind of not lamenting how cohesive this record sounds, because it does sound relatively cohesive. Almost as cohesive as Revival without the repetition. Revival felt like a grab bag of hits that came from like the same group of people. This feels like a pretty diverse sounding project. Speaking of which, the last track is Sweeter Place featuring Kid Cudi, and it's one of the very few features on this record. There's only one other feature that I already covered. It feels kind of throwbacky yet again towards the stylings that she had during the Stars Dance era, but this time with vocal chops and effects and a polished, refined energy to it. Kid Cudi being a feature was actually interesting. He sounds great on the track. I like the way that he meshes into the instrumental organically and complements Selena's voice. I feel like as an album closer, it's interesting. Track placements tend to make or break albums for me, so I felt thematically it was a good closer in some sense, but for another record in that it just sounds out of place. Maybe it's like a preview of the sound that she's gonna go for next time, or maybe they just couldn't find a place for this track to kind of fit into the record. So final overall thoughts, I think that the record is relatively solid. I would probably rate this at an 8 out of 10. Being nice and out of recency bias. Realistically, anywhere from a 6.5 to 7.5 out of 10. Very solid album. I was worried it was going to sound dated, which it does not, surprisingly. It's not going to mold the sound of the 2020s, believe me. These songs are demos and tracks and concepts from the 2010s era, but refined and polished to a sense that you really appreciate them for what they are and how they work. Am I going to stan Selena post this album? I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be a stan so much as I'm going to continue watching her career with active interest. I think this 4-year break has been relatively beneficial for her, and the comeback is actually truly a comeback and not a flop, so there's that. Thanks everyone who actually made it this far in the video. If you're watching this and wondering why it isn't a rambling mess or why it's surprisingly cohesive, it's because I wrote a script this time. Actually sat down during work and listened to the album in full using an Australian account. I'm that crazy. I just really wanted to hear what this record sounded like, and I wasn't disappointed. So if you like this video and you're new, like and subscribe. If you haven't, comment what your favorite track is, and I'll continue making these videos. It's great to be back, guys.